So just digitally, is there anything that's changed in evidencing wise in what you've seen, or the types of things people would evidence? Or
I think it's, like I say, I think it's important that whatever software system you choose to use is in line with the quality statements and the single assessment frame, and the fact that, as we've just mentioned, it's going to be a continual assessment of evidence rather than just being the inspector coming on one particular day to your home care agency. It's more likely that it'll be done remotely if you're a home care agency. They're not necessarily going to come in unless there is an issue with safe or and have to see face to face. But so you need those systems and processes in place in order to evidence your outstanding practice and evidence your compliance, evidence that you are safe and well led digitally, and rather than kind of just thinking, well, they'll see it on the day, because that day isn't going to be the same that it used to be. It's going to be stretched out over the year. So just making sure you've got your digital systems in place and software in order to share with the CQC and the management team and your stakeholders that you've done whatever you need to do to meet the quality statements. And if you want to be outstanding, you've got to kind of surpass the quality statements.
Yes, because quality statements are set out good.
Yes.
So if you just aim for that, you know when you become outstanding.
I think the evidence is really interesting, because especially probably for mine and Matt's world, that's the key bit for us. You know, when there's a claim, you know, how we demonstrate, you know, because every client really, if there's a liability claim, they want it to be defended for the business. And then it falls on the evidence. What evidence is there to show best practice, you know, which sometimes isn't in line with government guidelines, and it's down to interpretation. So to have those additional things in place to show the best practice, how you've gone above and beyond, will certainly help in our work.
I think that's so important. I mean, it's never been the case where it's sufficient to say, well, we do that. Well, that's fantastic. But when I come in, and when you guys come in after the event or after the inspection, and there's no evidence, how are we supposed to help that client in need? The evidencing is so important, certainly as Johnny says, in our world. Take a coroner's inquest as an example. That will invariably be at very least 12, if not 18 months down the line from the passing of the service user. Things are changing now with the movement towards the digital care notes, but I vividly remember more than one occasion a carer being called to give evidence before the coroner, and we're looking through the care notes, and it's like doctors writing. We're actually doing that with the paperwork, trying to fathom out what has been written, and it's not just deciphering what's said, it's the quality of what is written. One of the points I'd like to make is that, and hopefully this should go without saying, but experience tells me otherwise, take the time, take the extra few seconds to make that entry clear and purposeful. There's absolutely no point at all in putting a date, a time, and a comment all in order, or words to that effect, everything okay. Well, that's great. 6 hours later, if something happens, and if you're at an inquest, you will be asked in great detail what happened in the build-up to Mr. and Mrs. Smith falling out of bed, banging the head, etc. I've seen many carers put in very, very difficult circumstances when if only they'd taken an extra 20, 30 seconds, a minute, just to fill that entry in a little more detail, and it doesn't take much. It should happen, but unfortunately, certainly in cases I've seen, it's not happening routinely, and it puts Johnny in a difficult position. It certainly puts me when we're faced with a claim, an investigation, a prosecution, or a court hearing. Sometimes all of those. We have effectively, we can be in a starting position with one hand effectively behind our backs, which is not a great place to start from.
I think that's where Nathan's role, your role, well, all of our roles come in to support care providers to have that culture in the first place, because if the staff are running around like headless chickens because they haven't got the time to write the notes, because the culture just isn't there, and the travel time isn't there, for example, for home care in particular.
That's one of the biggest challenges in home care.
It can fall onto the carers to kind of, or the care team to need to rush notes and things like that, and it's not necessarily their fault. They just haven't got the time because the culture isn't there to allow them the time. That quality process isn't there, so that's really important. Again, that it starts from the top. And
it's a vicious circle, isn't it? And it's one that's really hard to break. But if you can break it, like with the examples Nathan's been giving, I've seen cases where a good leadership team has come in, a good manager. Invariably, the home's most difficult of cases have had difficult issues with retention of good quality staff. Again, that's an old problem. It's always been there in this sector, hasn't it? If you can get a good management team in, I hesitate to say half your problem's solved, because it's not, but it's a really good position to be in if you've got a committed management team with dedicated staff who are prepared, because it's a two-way street, this. You need the enthusiasm from the staff, and to do that you need to build the morale, don't you? So again, it stems from culture.
I think that's a key point. It's the culture, and it is led by the leadership of the managers. So a good manager will look at it and go, okay, this is where we are, and be honest, we're in a bit of a mess at the moment, this is what's going on, how are we going to get it out? Talk to your staff, keep them updated. I mean, in relation to record keeping, ours is very good, but I did an audit the other week and it was like, well, it could start to slip. Okay, let's put something in place now. Let's not just become complacent and go, we're an outstanding service. So I spoke with the team managers, and I spoke with the training and said, right, in January I want a training package put together, I want all the staff put on it within a few months. That's it. But initially what we've done is we're talking about it in team meetings, the team managers are talking to their staff. We're already putting things out there to talk about it, so it's already been looked at. Okay. But next year all staff are going to have retraining on record keeping to a level I want. So, and using practical examples of this is how someone recorded there, how could we record that a little bit better? And I've used before examples of the coroner, you know, if the coroner was there, this is what happened. And so it's shown them that if this ever goes to, if something happened and you ever went to court, this is how it would be read. This is how it would be looked at. So you need to make sure that it's recorded so that you can use that as evidence if it's ever needed. Yeah. It's to support what you've done. And so put all the information in there you need. And it's crucial. Yeah. So, but it's a culture thing, like you said. Yeah. Transparent, open, and good leadership.
Language is important in it as well, because you know, we see it in our world all the time when, you know, someone's had an accident and it's documented in the accident, but you know, there was blood spurting everywhere because so and so had injured themselves, and it reads much worse than it actually is, and immediately gets people on the defensive, rather than, you know, you want to be transparent about the situation and tackle it. But we certainly see that with claims, and I'm sure you see it.
Absolutely, and it's even down to the inspections. It's just back to the point we touched upon before, where the staff can't remember where a particular document is. It's those same staff quite often that I see that are asked about staffing levels, and that's lifting. There's very seldom malice in it, but it lifts. It's a cheap gain for the CQC if one of the staff has an issue because perhaps they wanted a certain day off and they couldn't take it, so they're not overly happy at that moment. But it's invariably that same member of staff who is asked by the inspector, what are the staffing levels? And then it's, oh right, well, if you're going to ask me, and then before you know it, you've got a real problem there. Again, I think pretty much 99% of the things we'll talk about today, you could link back to culture. Yes. Culture, leadership, morale. It does. It does. Assessment. Happy staff are productive staff. Are the staff that are not disgruntled. It's not an opportunity to attack the way things are at that particular organisation, because those comments are the ones that I will read in the report you will read when you're trying to fix these problems, and Johnny has to deal with when it comes to renewal time, and you've had an absolute battering from a CQC inspector.
Yeah, it used to be in our world that just sending in an action plan along with the renewal information would be enough, and regardless of, you could get an insurance quote no problem at all. And since COVID, really that's all changed. Yes, we still ask for an action plan, but again, we try and get out in front of things and ask for more detail. Okay, where are you at implementing some of these things? Have you utilised any third-party independent services that can back things up? Is there feedback from the local authority, CQC? Just so before we send it to an underwriter and immediately get them on the back burner, we can try and say, well, look, this is the situation presently, but these are all the proactive things the client's done, rather than just sit there and tackle it himself. This is the investment in the business in a digital platform so they can better record and evidence care. They have had a problem with staffing, so they brought in a law firm who specialises in that to bring people who are qualified in. Whatever it might be, all the different services, we've had an independent mock inspection or whatever it might be, and they're coaching and working with us to bring staff up. So we do definitely see it when it comes time for renewal. In all facets, safe and well-led seems to come together, but evidencing comes up as well often, where care providers, it seems just things have been in place, but we do get told quite often, well, we've challenged CQC. We do have evidence, but on the day we couldn't evidence it, or staff weren't sure where to find something, and it just seems unfortunate, really, when you have put the work in and the evidence is there, but you can't find it. It just seems an awful way to not get the result that you've kind of worked for.
I think you raised a good point about action plans there, because action plans are crucial, but from my experience in quality is the action plan, first of all, mine are broken down into many sections. So if we had someone with a medication error and it's been found in an audit, it won't just say medication error, team manager to deal with it. It'll say medication error, okay. On call, whoever's on call, or that manager there would say they've emailed the person who did the error to say that they no longer can do medication, they've spoken to them. And then it would list all the different tasks so that you can sign them off independently, so that even if one task isn't done, you can maybe put a comment saying wasn't able to be done, they couldn't put every observations because they're actually off for the next 3 days. But you might normally send, I think it might be a normal 4 days for that or whatever. But you can prove that, okay, we've got different sections, we've done most of it, but also making sure that your action plans are signed off, what you say you're going to do is going to be done. Or if it can't be done, a reason why, and this is why. And
an audit trail.
Yes, so say when CQC come, that's an great action plan, was it achieved? What did the action plan? No, was it signed off? What was the problem? So it's a live document. Yes, all those things. So it's about recording appropriately, accurately.
Yeah.
I think it's also as well, I add to that, if I may, it's about being realistic as well when you create those action plans.
Time frames.
Exactly, time frames. The managers have to be realistic. I say to my clients when they're up against it and they're in a real fight, if you're prepared to run with this fight, if you make a promise, you have to be in a position to follow through with those actions. It is absolutely no use whatsoever 6, 9, 12, 18 months down the line. If you say you are going to do something, you better be clear that you are able to do it and that you will do it, because when they come back after that time period, you have effectively you've given them the rope they need to hang you. So if you're in the position where you think the action plan will assist you as an organisation, as a provider, then it is vital that you those promises that you make you will keep.
Yes. And
I've seen, as I'm sure we all have, I've seen organisations fail. They get out of that particular hot water that they're in and think that they breathe a sigh of relief, but the problem is that the regulator is still there. The regulator does not go away, and especially, I mean, that's absolutely turned on its head with the new framework, because previously the sigh of relief is there, and you think, right, we're okay until the next inspection. Absolutely, forget that. Forget that. That's the fundamental change, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think that's crucial in relation to the way they're doing things now is continual, but also they always have got the information, feedback from stakeholders, so the service users, individuals, family members, and so it's crucial that when you've got someone who might be continually raising concerns, but because they've got an alternative motive, then it's about being transparent about that and communicating with the inspector and saying, okay, we've got this family member or significant person who is continuously raising concerns. However, we're meeting the needs of the individual we're providing support for, and to a high level we're working with other stakeholders like the local authority and other health professionals who are all saying the same thing, but the family's not happy for whatever reason. Discussing that with them and saying, what do you recommend? And then they'll come back and go, oh, you could do this, and then recording that, okay, I've done that, and keeping it live, keeping it going, so that when you get an inspection and they might speak to that individual, oh, you're the worst thing that's going on, you could be downgraded to, not just requiring improvement, but so it's about communication, like we've said, and discussing it and being open and transparent, so that you're forewarning and working with everybody, even your inspector.
I think that's a fantastic idea, because there's so many potential problems with that scenario. One of the things that struck me has been the most potentially concerning with the new framework is the fact that you could be under investigation without even knowing it. So your disgruntled employee or family member can go direct, raise the concerns, and they've already, CQC have said that they will take those concerns very, very important, seriously, and those concerns alone could trigger a remote review and assessment of your position. So again, just on a side issue, an equally important one, you have to make sure, my advice would be that you review your systems for dealing with reception and handling of feedback, complaints, staff grievances, family grievances, etc. They need to be up to speed and they need to be responsive. You cannot wait a fortnight to deal with that phone call from the family member who's persistently complaining, or the staff member who is dragging the team down with persistent complaints about staffing levels and inability to take holidays, etc.
I think about part of proactivity as well is, if you look at the way the single assessment is going to work, it's not just going to be about, like, mock inspections is still a good thing, but because the regulatory kind of regime is changing as such, it's more about, yes, still have your mock inspection and your audits, either internally or with someone like Rachel's organisation and Care Improvement Associates, or a consultant, but also it's that evidence review, that continual evidence. So under your quality statements, what evidence have you got to support that you're meeting that or exceeding that quality statement? And it's kind of more of like an evidence assessor role rather than just a mock inspector role, if that makes sense. To kind of have that process in place, whether, like I say, whether it's external or internal. So just continually reviewing your quality statement evidence to show that you are meeting that and having that in place ready for when they might ask for it to be emailed over to them. It might be they've got a focused evidence review that they're looking at with a particular service, and they say, well, we need X, Y and Z. You need to be able to find it pretty quick and get it sent over, or however that is going to be shared with the regulator. So yeah, I think having that in place is really important, and having that role within the organisation or externally to keep on top of evidence assessment, basically.
Yeah, I want to say from a leadership point of view, with well led, I think a lot of the organisations that we work with, if they've got multiple services and they get a hint that one of the services is going to be inspected, it's like move everybody across that service, all hands to the pump. Let's get them, make sure all their evidence is ready and assessed and the team are prepared. But obviously with the new framework, that assessment is continual across all their services. So we can't do the sort of, pull everybody away from, because you could have a couple of services at the same time being assessed. So that does need a rethink from a leadership point of view, in making sure that there is as Sam said, maybe somebody in that position who is continuously overseeing the evidence collation for each of the services.
Or a panel, you could have a panel including your team members and even service users.
Yeah.
Something like that,
And I think, as you mentioned earlier, there is that whole panic of the inspection, and I think preparing teams, like we do mock inspections, and one of the key things that I hear from managers is, I'm not sure how my team are going to respond. They've never been through an inspection before. I don't want them to panic. So I think that sort of whole mock inspection or internal audits is a good way to practice. And just, it's not just about being, checked up upon. It's, it's a time
supportive.
You can take it as an opportunity to show how the outstanding care that you've been delivering, and it's your time to shine, and try and put a positive spin on it, and instead of it just being seen as
it's an educational learning process. If you do it internally or use a consultant, you can use that as a really good learning process and get loads of positives out of it, and take that rabbit in the headlights element away, or dampen it down a bit.
And it also highlights as well where the evidence gaps might be, but also if there is any evidence storage issues. So we might, when we've arrived before, we know we've got somebody, we have to wait until someone gets there in the office because everything's on their laptop. Or there's a laptop in the cupboard over there that's got policies and procedures on. Nobody knows the password to it. So we're an hour into the audit then, and we're not seeing the evidence we need to see. Some of it's in a filing cabinet, some of it's in somebody. So having all that evidence collated in an organised structure, I think is going to be key as well. Obviously, in line with the key questions, in line with the quality statements and the evidence categories, so you can. CQC won't wait about. They won't be as understanding
and
and
they want
say,
it there and then. So if you can't find it, then you haven't got it.
But
one of the things we did, because obviously dom care is different to residential, and for Happy Futures we're not like the normal dom care anyway, because we work with learning disabilities. We've got a few sites where we work on, but we split our overall people we support into teams. So we used to have 3 team managers, we've now got 8, and we put everybody into teams, staff included, and the individuals with a manager overseeing them. And then when we run our audits, we run them within, they can be broke down to the individual or the team, and then overall as a collective of the dom care business. So that if you have got one team which is maybe underperforming in some reason for whatever reason, it'll be highlighted on our audits. So then, and we rate it in relation to how CQC we think they're going to be doing it. So that then you can go, okay, all the other teams are doing well, why isn't this one? Are we sharing the best practice? What's not going on? We'll discuss that at the quality meetings, so that you can ensure that it's embedded. But when CQC come, you don't know which ones they're going to go look at, so which team they're going to go and inspect. So it could be that they go to the really good one, right? Excellent. It might be that they want to go to the one which you might not want them to, but you might not have identified that. So it's being practical and going, okay, which areas are we not doing good in, and let's being proactive in improving that, so that we know as an overall we might be outstanding, but what on a worst day they go to a team which is underperforming. It might be for staff, and it might be for that the individual they're looking at is in crisis, so it's a lot more stress for them, whatever reason. But then you can look at that and address it and share, making sure everybody's doing what is needed. And I think that's crucial within dom care. Is that they don't just look at it as a whole, but they break it down into teams, which most dom cares do work like that, but do your audits like that as well.
I think especially when you're in different regions as well, there's different, obviously teams form friendships and relationships within different communities, and if you've got any issues going on, that you could have a team in one area that's all happy and getting on fine, you could have some infighting going on in a team, but that then their feedback will be very different, and how it's going to put a limiter on your rating overall for that key question. Or
that's where the software or the digital system is crucial if you've got multiple sites, because you need to be able to look at a dashboard that's got an overview, so you've got oversight of those multiple settings. And paper processes just don't allow for that. So that's crucial to have that system in place, so you can see, well, in Scarborough we've got this going on, that's our kind of evidence assessment of where we are there, but in Bridlington or East Riding we've got that going, so just having that overview is really crucial.
Yes, it allows you to do, and with your dashboards you can see it on an organisation, but then you can see it on the key teams.
You can see if you've got one service that's got lots of evidence uploaded and doing really well, and seeking out opportunities to upload evidence. You might have another service there's not much on there, they've not uploaded much evidence, and is it a training issue? Is it a support issue? Is it the,
Drill
you
down.
know?
Yeah.
You can really then get into that and identify where the gaps are.
And create healthy competition.
Yes.
Yeah. Between it's
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
it's a win-win.
Yeah, celebrate best practice as well.
Exactly,
You know,
yes.
in handovers and team
Yeah.
communications, newsletters, things
Yeah,
like that. You know, well
definitely.
done to that team. They've done really well. They've uploaded X amount of evidences
Yeah.
this week. So yeah, I think
When you've got organisations who've got upwards of 20 settings, sometimes hundreds of settings, franchises who've got multiple home care settings throughout the country, you know, you can, from a head office and quality management point of view, to be able to see that from one location in the head office, so to speak, it's just
It makes a lot of huge value.
and to logistically travel across
yeah.
the country trying to get into everywhere is expensive. It's time consuming.
So that fits
Yeah.
into your green policy.
Yes, yeah, reducing carbon.